And as we've been looking at thinking, we've got a thinking problem since the fall. We have a mind that just doesn't think right about things, and we've seen that in many different areas. And since today is Father's Day, could have done this on Mother's Day as well, I thought we'd talk about authority. So who's in charge here? There is something within us, due to the fall, but kind of hot-wired in us, that we want to challenge people's authority, which is truly amazing when you think about it. Can you think about if you're there during Jesus' time and you see him do the miracles, heal a blind man from birth, raise the dead, and then to turn around and tell him, hey, who gives you the authority to do these things? How dare you? Can you imagine that? Who do you think you are? It's crazy, isn't it? But on a day-to-day basis, let's face it, we fight against authority. Who gives you the right to tell me what to do? I am in charge here. Anybody remember what happened on March 30th, 1981? Anybody? I was sitting in a civics class in high school, freshman year, and the president got shot. That was the day Reagan got shot by Hinckley right outside what has been known now as the Reagan Hotel. I've been to that hotel many times. Right out there on the sidewalk, he got shot. And do you remember a guy by the name of Alexander Haig? Alexander Haig was the Secretary of State at this time, and as soon as word got to the White House that the president has been shot and has been taken to the hospital, Alexander Haig stood up before the press, immediately had a press conference and said, I'm in charge here. To which everybody said, no, you're not. There's a line of succession in our Constitution that says you're number 5, okay? Secretary of State is number 5 on that list. It goes, President, if he can't do it, Vice President, if he can't, Speaker of the House, if he can't, the Senate Pro Tem. Anybody even know who the Senate Pro Tem is? All it is the longest serving senator. It's the guy or woman who's just been there the longest and hasn't died yet. That person is before the Secretary of State. So you got a long line, but how many times do we do that in our life and say, I'm in charge here? And God says, no, you're not. In fact, there's a long line of people who I have put in charge, that I have given authority, that I have put into place before you. So you've got to listen to them. And what is our immediate thinking? Well, I don't want to. I want to be in charge. I want to be in charge here. Which, by the way, just a side story. Actually, we were playing softball. My wife's not here, but we used to play softball with the congressional office, and we were actually playing the Alexander Haig for President Committee. Talk about a bunch of losers. Anyways, they basically spent the whole time getting absolutely drunk. The entire time. They were in complete disarray, which caused me at some point during the game to say what? Hey, who's in charge here? I thought it was funny. They didn't think it was funny at all. But we want to say, who's in charge? Who has authority? And we have to start getting into our head that first and foremost, above all, who has authority? Everywhere, all the time, no matter the situation, who absolutely has the authority and is in charge? God. Is that okay with you? In fact, let's take a look at it again. Let's go to Psalm 96. And just a little side interest into how things get done around here in the church. I was over there and I'd already done the bulletin, got it all taken care of, listed it all out, and then I was going through the study. I was like, I really need a psalm that highlights that God reigns, that God is the one. And I started going through, I was reading a bunch of them, I was going through different ones, and it just struck me as this one's a perfect one. Number 96 is such a perfect one. I didn't even realize until we were reading this morning that it was also a responsive reading. I had no idea. So just the way that goes. Like I said, it's a weird process around here. It's not as in tune as you would think it would be. It just kind of happens. But in Psalm 96 it says, "Oh, sing unto the Lord a new song. Sing unto the Lord all the earth." Why should all the earth sing unto God? Because he's in control where? He has authority where? He is the King and the Lords of Lords where? Everywhere. Well, they don't acknowledge him as such. They don't recognize him as such. They refute. It doesn't matter. He is overall, isn't he? Sing in the Lord a new song, all the earth. Sing in the Lord, bless his name, show forth his salvation from day to day. Declare his glory among the heathen, his wonders among all people. For the Lord is what? Great. Now that word great is a loaded word. I mean, it is great in every sense of the word. Great in power, great in might, great in goodness, great in holiness, great in size, great in all things. He is great, and greatly to be praised. He is to be feared above all gods, before all other authorities, before all others who claim to have authority, because what? They don't have it, except he, what? Gives it to them. For all the gods of the nations are idols, but the Lord made the heavens. Honor and majesty are before him. Strength and beauty are in his sanctuary. Give unto the Lord, O ye kindreds of the people. Give unto the Lord glory and strength. Give unto the Lord the glory due unto his name. Bring an offering and come into his courts. O worship the Lord in the beauty of holiness. Fear before him all the earth. Say among the heathen that the Lord what? Reigns. That is what the world needs to do. And frankly, they aren't going to be too excited or think much about it if who ain't worshiping him and acknowledging that he reigns. He is in absolute control. And are you okay with that? Every day, every hour, every moment, are you okay with the fact that God is in control? That God is in authority? He can tell you what to do. Is that okay? Why wouldn't we? I want you to think about your life and times, maybe teachers, maybe others in authority that you said, I don't want to listen to them. Why wouldn't you want to listen to them? Why wouldn't you do what somebody tells you to do? Well, there's a lot of reasons. They don't know what they're doing. You ever had a boss like that? They have no idea what they're doing. I know more, so I don't have to listen to them. They're bad people. They're doing bad things. Why would I want to listen to somebody doing bad things, right? Well, I don't have to follow somebody doing bad things. They're not very powerful. They can't make me, right? That old saw, you can't make me, right? I want you to think about God for a minute. Is he smarter than you? Does he know what he's doing? Yeah. Is he good? Is he better than you? Yeah. Is he powerful? Yeah. Can he make you? Oh, yeah. Yeah. In fact, let's go to Romans real quick. Romans chapter 11, verse 33. This is a reminder. Romans chapter 11, starting in verse 33. I love this little snapshot of God and his greatness. Romans 11:33. Oh, the depth of the riches, both of the wisdom and knowledge of God. How unsearchable are his judgments and his ways past finding out. So let me ask you something. Who knows better? He does. He knows best. Should you listen to him? For who hath known the mind of the Lord, or who hath been his counselor, or who hath first given to him, and it shall be recompensed unto him again. Does he owe you anything? Do you hold anything over him? No. For of him and through him and to him are all things, to whom be glory forever. Amen. That's who it is. Is that okay with you? To have that guy, the holy, perfect, potent, all-powerful, all-seeing, all-everything God as the one who says, do it. Yeah. In fact, anybody know what the next verse is? Chapter 12, verse 1? I beseech you, therefore, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. And do not be conformed to this world and their thinking, but be transformed by the renewing of your what? Mind, that you may prove what is that good, acceptable, and perfect will of God. So knowing who God is, how great He is, how much better He is than us, listen to Him and do His will. That's not too far of a stretch, is it? Doesn't that make sense? Let Him be in control. Do what He says. He deserves it, and frankly, He'll take it anyways. Right? So everywhere, all the time, who has authority? God has authority. I want it. Don't take it. Don't take it. Let Him have His authority. What about in the home? God also sets order in the home, doesn't He? And who, now we're on Father's Day, looking at the kids, who is in charge in the home? Parents. Let's go to Ephesians chapter 6. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 1. Parents, you have this posted all over your house. Children, obey your parents in the Lord. Now, this is going to be a theme we're going to have throughout this thing. Who has the ultimate authority? God. And God says, children, obey who? I have given parents authority. You kids, obey your parents. By the way, how far back does that instruction go? At least to the Ten Commandments. Right? Anybody remember that in the Ten Commandments? Honor thy father and mother, which is the first commandment with a promise that it may be well with thee and that thou mayest live long on the earth. He says, listen to them because they have wisdom. They have understanding. They do know better. I'm always amazed how many kids will sit there and look me in the eye and say, my parents don't understand. Why should I listen to them? I can guarantee you, anything you're going through, your parents have gone through. And they may have made a mistake. Should you learn from them? Yeah. Learn from your parents' mistakes. Learn from your parents' successes. Learn from your parents. That's why God puts us in there. In fact, that was has been one of the problems throughout history is that kids don't listen to their parents. In fact, wasn't that a problem with Israel? Remember the book of Judges? That cycle? They came into the land. God gave them that promised land. It was wonderful. And they obeyed God and they served God. But the very next generation, what did they do? I don't listen to my parents. I don't do what they're going to do. I'm going to worship that God. I'm going to worship these gods over here. And what did that lead to? Disaster. And then, after they got overthrown and their life was miserable, they cried to God, said they were sorry. And then that generation, they then served God. They worship God. What did the very next generation do? Oh, you guys are so old-fashioned. That old-fashioned God stuff. We don't want to listen to that. We're going to worship these other gods over here. And what happened? Disaster. How many times did that happen? Cycle after cycle after cycle. That's why. Let's go to 2 Timothy chapter 3. We were just here this week on Wednesday night. 2 Timothy chapter 3. And what we're going to see here is Paul looking forward to the end times and how bad it is. And by the way, it's been this bad for a long time, but it's just going to keep getting worse. And look at this list he comes up with in 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 1. This know also that in the last days perilous times shall come. Bad times are coming, aren't they? For men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers. What's that next one? Disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, etc., etc., etc. And I put this one in here because this is something Paul hit on every time. Whenever he had a list of horrible, terrible things that people do. I don't care if it's Romans, Ephesians, Colossians, it didn't matter. When he's writing a letter and he's listing all the horrible, horrible things that people do, what was always on the list? Some of the other things may change, but what was always on the list? Disobedient to parents. Because God put them in charge for a reason. They have authority. You need to listen to them and follow them. And of course, I always get the, what if they tell me to do terrible, bad things? Okay, come talk to me then. There aren't too many parents telling their kids to go out and rob banks. I haven't seen that too often. Or go do this, that, or the other thing. So most of the time, what are we really fighting over? Do I have to go to bed? Do I have to clean my room? Do I have to take out the garbage? Do I have to really listen to them when they do this and tell me to do my homework and do all these terrible, terrible, horrible things, right? Listen to your parents. God put them in authority. Get it out of your head that somehow this is an optional thing. You don't really have to. And like he said, do that because who said so? They have authority. Do what they said so because he said so. Okay? Listen to them. All right? All right, let's get off the kids a little bit. You guys, a little sigh of relief. You're okay now? Now we'll go into a later part of your life called work. How many have ever had a job? How many have ever had a terrible job? How many have a terrible boss? Blah, blah, blah. Who's in charge, though? The boss. The boss. In fact, let's go to Ephesians chapter 6. If you stayed there, let's go back. First, he talked about children and parents. By the way, he does say in there, after that, fathers, don't provoke your kids. So parents, don't be jerks about it. Okay? So that's not your job. We'll get to that in a second. Then he says in verse 5, chapter 6, verse 5, servants, be obedient to them that are your masters according to the flesh, with fear and trembling and singleness of your heart, with a pure heart, with sincerity, as unto who? Let's face it. If God were your boss, would you listen? Would you do what he told you to do? Would you have a good attitude? Let's be honest. Most of the time. most of the time, yeah. Your arguments certainly go away, though, don't they? But he's saying here, no matter who they are, what kind of attitude they have, or what they do, it doesn't matter. God has put them in authority, therefore, because he said so, do what they said so, right? In fact, look what he says next, verse 6. Not with eye service, not just when they're around, not just to please their eyes as men pleasers, but as servants of Christ, doing the will of God from the heart, with good will doing service as to the Lord and not to men, knowing that whatsoever good thing any man does, the same shall receive of the Lord, whether he be bond or free. It doesn't even matter if you are in this society that he's writing to, a slave, or whether you're the grunt and the bottom rung of the system, or whether you're being mistreated, it doesn't matter. Serve with a smile. Serve from the heart. Serve like you want to be there. Because in reality, who are you really serving? God. Which brings us to our question. You okay with that? Sometimes we're not. Now, I'm thankful that I live in a society where if I really find it unbearable, I can what? Get another job. All right? For some, that's not an option, though. In fact, go to 1 Timothy chapter 6. We studied this recently also in 1 Timothy. Well, if you really have no option, and again, we find ourselves sometimes in our life where we don't really have an option. We have a lot of other jobs. We really need this. How many need to pay the rent? How many need to pay the phone bill? How many need to pay for a car? You got bills to pay. You got to work, right? And look what it says in 1 Timothy chapter 6. That as many servants as are under the yoke count their own masters worthy of all honor, that the name of God and his doctrine be not blasphemed. And they that have believing masters, what if the master is actually a fellow Christian? Let them not despise them because they are brethren, but rather do them service because they are faithful. And beloved, partakers of the benefit, these things teach and exhort. In fact, if any man teach otherwise and consent not to wholesome words, even the words of our Lord Jesus Christ, and to doctrine which is according to godliness, he is proud, knowing nothing, but doting about questions and strifes of words, whereof comes envy, strife, railings, evil surmisings, etc., etc., etc. His point here, and we studied this recently, his point is, just because you don't like your station in life, just because you don't like your situation in life, does that give you the right to disrespect those in authority? No. In fact, work hard, work with a good attitude, who knows what will happen? What if it never changes? Be content. By the way, isn't that better? When the kids get out of the van on Tuesday night, you know what I always say to them? Have fun at school tomorrow. You got to be there anyways. Right? Why do we make ourselves miserable? I'll show those in authority I'll have a miserable time every day. Does your boss really care? No. I'm gonna hate coming to work. I'm gonna hate doing my job. I'll show them. No, what does he say? Do it with the right attitude. Do it with a good attitude, honoring those in charge, and do your best. No matter the situation, because does it really matter? What if I went through this whole life with a crummy job, barely scraping by? Well, what's eternity? Is it coming? Is it going to be okay? Yeah. Do it unto the Lord. Again, who? God. God says, do it unto the Lord, do it right. No matter who they are, no matter the situation, do it with a good attitude, right? Do it unto the Lord, be a good witness for the Lord, right? Make sense? Change in attitude, change in mind. All right. We're okay. No problem there, right? Parents are all okay with this one. Love that one. You notice we didn't talk about the whole husbands and wives. We'll let that aside. It's there too. Work, we're okay, I'm okay, all right. Now everybody's going to shut down. We shut their mind. I'm done now. Because in society, who has authority? Government. When we say government, who are we talking about? President, Congress, courts, governor, legislature, courts, board of trustees, school boards, teachers, principals, police, blah, 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 blah. We got a lot of authority out there. Laws, rules, and regulations. Has anybody ever actually even read all the laws, rules, and regulations? The answer is no. So, I read a lot of them. I haven't read all of them. It's impossible. There's a lot out there. But in society, as we live in this world, God says, do what? Romans 13. Romans unlucky 13. Right? Romans chapter 13, verse 1. We'll start with the who. Let every soul. Who's got a soul here today? All right. Okay. Still with your body. Good. Let every soul be subject, obey, and honor in all areas unto the higher powers. Oh, I'll define the higher powers, right? I'll decide which ones are higher and which ones are lower, right? I'll decide who's really in charge, who's not in charge. No, who's decided? God has. For there is no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained by whom? By God. He allows it. I'm going to ask a very tricky question right now. Who's President of the United States? Anybody? Biden is President of the United States. Who ordained him as such? God. Who was our last President of the United States? Trump. Who ordained him as such? Obama? Either one of the Bushes? It doesn't matter where we think they should be or shouldn't be. And frankly, we have a democracy. I don't know if everybody noticed that. We have a democracy in the United States. So whatever the democracy sides, that's who it is, period, right? And that's the system we have. Who ordained that system to be allowed in this United States? God. If they're not doing their job, if they're not doing it right, God can take this thing out of here quickly, can he? He can get rid of this whenever he wants to. And has he done that in the past? If there's been any nations that have stood up and not done their job as God has seen fit, he does what? He destroys them. He wipes them off the face of the earth. Because who's in charge? And while they are in charge, what is the job of every Christian? Be subject. Now, in every area, 99.9%. Yes, if the government ever said, hey, you go kill that person for no reason whatsoever, can you say no? Yes. If they said you can no longer worship God, you can no longer have a Bible, can we go, no, I'm not going to do that, okay? Fortunately, we live in a country where that doesn't happen. There are countries where that does happen, doesn't it? And even in those countries, when can you disobey? Only when it comes to a direct disagreement with what God has told you to do. That's it. Other than that, they have to be what? Does it matter if it's Hitler? Does it matter if it's Stalin? Does it matter who it is? King George? All be subject. Verse 2, whosoever therefore resists the power, resists the ordinance of God, and they that resist shall receive to themselves punishment. Is God being serious about this? Yes. For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to evil. Will you then be afraid of the power? Do that which is good, and thou shalt have praise of the same. For he is the minister. Whoever's in charge is minister of God to thee for good. That is why God put them, is to have order, to create justice. Now again, if they're not, what will God do? God will remove them. But that's their job, right? You want to have no problem with the government? Obey the government. Do what they say. Even pay your taxes? Most of them. No, all of them. Pay your taxes, obey what they tell you to do. And again, fortunately, we live in a society where if we really think they're doing a bad job, we have a what? Say. And as Proverbs says, Proverbs gives us great. If it is a righteous government, people will rejoice. If it is an evil government, people will mourn. So we should strive for a good government, a righteous government, for those who will follow the will of God. But even if they don't, does that give us a right to say, not mine. I'm not going to follow them. I'm not going to do what they want me to do. No. You don't. You can't. Because of who? And we're okay with him being in charge, right? All the time? And he says what? The government's in charge. So what? Be subject to them. You okay with that? If not, what do you got to change? You're thinking. In fact, let's go to 1 Peter chapter 2. Now, I'll admit, this is Paul and Peter. They didn't live with terrible, terrible governments like the Biden administration, with all their terrible policies and all the terrible things they're doing and killing people out there and things like that. They only had Nero. They only had the Roman government. They only had those nice guys, those wonderful, wonderful people. They had nothing but great people in authority. No. In fact, anybody want to guess who killed Paul and who killed Peter? The government. The Roman Empire killed these two guys for preaching the gospel. And you know what was cool about both of them? When the Roman government came after them, what was the only charge they could find against them? Preaching the gospel. Could they find any other reason to throw them in jail? Any other reason? Did they follow every other edict and rule of the Roman government? The answer was what? Yes. That is one of the funniest episodes in the Bible is the book of Acts, when they're trying to send Paul back to Rome because he's demanded to see Caesar, and it took them 2 years to get him back. You know why it took 2 years? They couldn't find a charge against him. They spent 2 years trying to find something that he did, talking to people all along the way, trying to find something to say he violated a Roman law. And they had a lot, you think we got a lot of laws. They had a lot of laws. They couldn't find a single one. That's what we should be like. The only reason the government should ever have a problem with us is because we're preaching the gospel. And we're worshiping God. Unfortunately, that's not a problem right now. I mean, happy is not a problem right now. That's what Peter's talking about when he says in 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 11, "Dearly beloved, I beseech you as strangers and pilgrims abstain from fleshly lusts, which war against the soul, having your conversation honest among the Gentiles, that whereas they speak against you as evildoers, and will some governments and some societies still speak against us when we do what is right and what is righteous?" Absolutely. Does that mean we can disobey their rules? "They may, by your good works, which they shall behold, glorify God in the day of visitation. Submit yourselves to every ordinance of man for the Lord's sake, whether it be to the king or as supreme, or unto governors, or unto them that are sent by him for the punishment of evildoers, and for the praise of them which do well. For it is the will of God that with well-doing you may put to silence the ignorance of foolish men." Breaking the law is not an option. Unless it is what? You can't preach the gospel. We have to be subject. What's God's hope here? Is that by doing good and not doing that, our message can get out. Because let's face it, if we're breaking the law and doing all these other things, and we were bad-mouthing and we're dishonoring and disrespecting, why should they listen to us? When we say God is love. God saves. Why should they listen to us? All they're going to hear is what? All the venom and all the hatred and all the other stuff. It says, no. Respect them, honor them, pray for the king, pray for those in charge, pray for them, bless them, do those things, honor them, respect them, for hopes that what? They will learn from us, right? And by the way, who's the ultimate here? And God says what? Obey your parents. God says what? Serve your boss. Says what? Be subject to government, right? And this same God, his whole instruction to everybody, whether you're in charge or not, is to what? Serve. That's where we really need to change our mind. Because some will say, okay, now I'm in charge. Right? I've moved up. Now I'm the boss. Now I'm an authority. Now I can crush people. now I can, because I'm not subject to anybody. I'm in charge, right? I'm the parent. Oh, man, I can do whatever I want. No. Here's the funny thing. What God's instruction is, if you are those subject, you serve. You're subject to those in authority, you give them respect, and you obey them. If you're one in charge, guess what? You serve. And you treat people with respect. Why am I saying that? Let's go to Galatians chapter 5, verse 13. See, the world wants to tell us that there is authority and subjects. If you're subject, you should fight against the authority, and if you're in authority, you should crush those in your lording over, right? What does God say? No. Who serves who? Those he puts in charge serve those they take care of, and those they're taken care of, show them respect and serve them. Wouldn't the world be a great place if everybody thought that way? What does Galatians 5:13 say? For brethren, you have been called unto liberty. Yay, I can do what I want. Only use not liberty for an occasion of the flesh, but by love serve one another. We're supposed to use our liberty, our freedom under God to do what? Serve other people. Even sacrifice. Even give. In fact, look, what does Philippians chapter 2 say? Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians. Philippians chapter 2, verse 4. Philippians chapter 2, verse 4. Look not every man on his own things, but every man also on the things of others. Care about what's going on in other people's lives. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. Isn't he the ultimate example of this? Who was in charge? Who had all the authority when Jesus Christ was here on earth? He did. Right? But I want to ask you something. Was he subject to the Father? Was he subject to his parents? Well, he never had a boss. But was he subject to the government? Yeah. 100%. What charge could they bring against him? Claiming to be God. Which he was. So that's all they can come up with. The Romans came up with nothing. Not a single law broken. That's how impossible that is. How many of us sitting here today could say, if I brought up on charges, they'd all be false? He did this, right? He's the example. In fact, look what it says. Let this mind, the way you think, be in you, which is also in Christ, who being in the form of God, he is God, though thought it not robbery to be equal with God, but made himself of no reputation and took upon him the form of a what? Servant. And was made in the likeness of men, and being found in fashion as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient unto death, even the death of the cross. He came and what? Served. So whether you're an authority or you're the one who's subject, you should be what? Serving. Which brings us to, so, what you're saying, Pastor. Gotcha. Right? What God is saying is if those authorities serve me, I serve them. But if they don't, then I don't have to serve them, right? No. You just have to figure out which side you're on. In some situations, you're going to be the one in authority. You may be the boss. You may be the parent. You may be those in authority. You may work for the government. You may be those in those situations. When you're in those situations, how should you treat those that you are in charge of? Serve them. Want the best for them. Help them along. But if you're the one in subject, you're the employee, you're the kid, you're the person living in a society with a government, what's your job? Honor, obey, respect, be subject to. Right? There's only a couple outs in that. And that's what we need to do. Because who says so? The ultimate authority says so. That's best for him. That's best for us. In fact, even Jesus said, Matthew chapter 21, I need to go there right now, but he said to his disciples, hey, the Gentiles, the ones who don't believe, those non-Christians out there, they always want to lord it over each other. They always want to, to take always for themselves, be selfish, always taking from those who are under their authority. We're not to be that way. We're to serve. We're to help. We're to do what is in their best interest, even sacrifice for them, just as Jesus sacrificed for us, right? So that requires a change in what? In the mind. So no matter who you are, those in authority or those subject, serve with sincerity. That's what God says. Let's serve him. Amen? Let's pray.